happening, YouTube? Jeff Robbins here. We are back with another Briggs LO206 engine service video. I'm extremely excited to do this particular video because see if you guys will notice it. If not, I'll remind you real quick. And one thing you'll notice about these motors is it's actually sealed, so you cannot open up the bottom of this motor. And there's a seal on the back as well down here. You cannot open up to get into the inside of this motor to make changes like a lot of other classes will. So crazy enough, this is actually our old engine. I bought this engine back in 2018 and the last time we ran it was in 2020. And this is the engine that I did all my old engine videos with. So it's crazy that this thing has found its way back to my bench, but here it is. And when the customer dropped it off, I recognized it immediately, smiling from ear to ear. So we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna put this thing on the dyno. We'll do a before dyno pull, we'll do an after dyno pull. We'll pull the head on it, we'll go through the valves, check everything, we'll do a leak down test on it, all the fun stuff, and see if we can get this thing running for him. He says that it's good through the turns, but it's got absolutely nothing down the straightaway. And that seems to be the theme with these engines. And one other thing I wanted to show you real quick is I got a good friend out of the track and he built me this isolated leak down tester. So now I can test these Briggs heads after I take them off the engine, so I don't have to worry about any leakage out the short block anymore, and we can get these things sealed up tight. I mean, I've already tested this thing, it's absolutely amazing. Got a little O-ring on there. So shout out to him for that. He actually built me a double stacker cart transportation stand as well. Can't thank him enough, man. Really appreciate that. So let's go ahead, let's get this engine on the dyno. Let's do some service and see if we can get it running again. Okay, so let's go ahead and do our first leak down test. We're going to keep the head on the engine when we do the first test. So I've already got the rockers removed. So I went to check the lash, obviously before I took them off, and there was zero lash, probably negative lash. So once I unloosened the locking bolts, I had to back the bolt off a full 360 degrees before I was even able to wiggle the rocker. So these things were way too tight. So that's one thing right off the bat. And that's pretty easy to do, or you can actually set your lash And if you're not at top dead center, it'll kind of do the same thing. They'll be really, really tight, and it can be hard to pull it over. And sometimes, even if you can get the engine started, it'll just sound different. It'll be like a real deep engine sound, and it's not going to be the standard 206 engine sound that you're used to. So that's kind of an indicator if you've over tightened your valve lash. So let's go ahead and we'll do a quick leak down and see what we're starting with. Looks like we are just over 30% leak down, about 35% leak down. Not hearing much from the exhaust. I can definitely hear some out of the intake. So our intake's definitely leaking. The exhaust sounds pretty good though. Let's open the bottom and see how loud it gets when we open the bottom. So yeah, like always, we're definitely leaking out of the bottom. We've got about 35%, and it seems to be just coming out of the intake. So we'll call that 32%. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'll take the head off the engine, and we're gonna throw it on the isolated tester, and we'll test it again. Okay, here we go. So we've got this all mounted up on the isolated tester. So let's apply some pressure. It looks like we still got close to 20% leak down. So that makes me feel pretty good. At least it wasn't all coming out of the bottom end. Definitely coming out of the intake. That exhaust seems pretty good. So that's what we're starting with. So we'll go ahead, we're gonna lap and cut these seats up and see if we can get that sealed up a little better. Alright guys, so I just finished up cutting the seats on the head. The head passed the Robbins Racing flashlight test. So let's go ahead and put the leak up tester on it and see what our results are. Check that out, guys. Right at 10, just below 10. And I'm telling you right now, after I run this on the dyno, that'll seal up tight as can be. So that right there is perfect in my opinion. There we go. All right guys, so we've got the top all sealed up. We're gonna go ahead, put this thing back together, and then we will do our final dyno pull and see if we made things better or worse. Alright guys, so we just finished up our post-service dyno pull. I've got the head off. Let's go ahead and do a quick leak up test on it and see if it sealed up any better after we put it through the heat cycle. Look at that, guys. Negative. I'll take it. Okay, so both dyno pulls are done. Let's go ahead and do a quick data review. Let's take a look at the pre-service pull first. Let's zoom in. Okay, so first pre-service dyno pull, we saw 7.88 horsepower. That came in at 65 RPM, and we have a peak torque of 9.38, and that came in at 2291 RPM. Let's go to the post-service pool and see if we've made any improvements. Go ahead and zoom in. Okay. So definitely a little better. We saw 8.34 horsepower. And that came in at 4980 RPM, and we saw 9.41 foot-pounds of torque, and that came in at about 3000 RPM, 3028. So we definitely put a little power back into the engine. Most of it was probably coming out that intake valve. It was leaking quite a bit, but we've got that completely sealed up. So at this point, if there's any power loss, it's definitely coming out the bottom of the engine. So there we go, guys. We added about a half a horse back into our old engine. Okay guys, so there you have it. We have another successful Briggs LO206 engine service. We're able to put about a half a horse of power back into the engine. Customers should be happy. Should be running great for them when they get this thing back out of the track. And one thing I did notice when I was cleaning and going through the carburetor is that the choke is broken. There's a piece missing on it, so I'll have to let the customer know they may want to invest into a new carburetor. If this thing ever has issues starting, they may have some issues because that choke's not going to do a whole lot for them. And you know what, before I go real quick, I wanted to show you this. So I've got two exhaust valves here, two intake valves. But if you look closely, here's an exhaust valve. So that's an exhaust valve. Here's an exhaust valve. That's an intake valve. And then in both of these intake wrappers are both exhaust valves. So that's crap. I found that when I was trying to do the top end of this, and I ended up stealing the intake valve out of my spare head because I didn't notice that this one actually had an intake valve in it. So go ahead, keep an eye out for that, guys. In case you buy some valves, you might end up with something you shouldn't have ordered. So again, I really appreciate you guys for tuning in and watching the videos. Plan your race, race your plan. Have a good time at the track.